The Wisconsin Badgers have targeted a new offensive coordinator. I'm going to tell you why I think it could make a lot of sense and also why I'm a little bit nervous with Jeff Grimes.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Harris, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I was actually going to take today off, but then the Badgers went out and it appears they have targeted their offensive coordinator. Pete Thamel over on Twitter said Jeff Grimes, the Kansas offensive coordinator, is the main target for the Badgers. He did go on to say nothing has been finalized. This is not the official hiring. It looks like he's probably in line to be the guy, though. So who is Jeff Grimes? Who is the 56-year-old offensive coordinator for Kansas? Why does this make sense? And why does it maybe make you a little bit nervous? Let's start with what makes sense here. Why I think this could be a really good hire for the Badgers, and why it's maybe a return a little bit to their roots, a little bit to what Luke Fickell wants to do, a little bit to what the Badgers want to do. I'd start with this. Kansas's running game last year was really, really good. This is a former offensive lineman. He's coached offensive line. If you want to get back to running the ball, if you want to get back to power football, if you want to get back to keeping ahead of schedule on offense, this hire makes a lot of sense. Kansas was second in the Big 12 last year offensively from a rushing standpoint, over 200 yards per game, averaged 5.52 yards per carry. He's a wide zone scheme type of guy. Again, former offensive lineman, former offensive line coach. I love the offensive line coach pedigree. He's coached offensive line at Boise State, Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, Auburn, Virginia Tech, LSU. So he's been to a lot of places. And quite frankly, if I'm getting an offensive coordinator, I want him to be a previous quarterback or a previous offensive lineman. I want one of those two things because they're going to understand either the scheme, seeing it from the quarterback size, or they're going to understand it from the trenches perspective, opening up running lanes, gaps. I want one of those two things. So I love the fact that he's a former offensive lineman. I love the fact that he's had successful rushing games. He's a two-time Broyles Assistant Coach of the Year finalist. So he had a really successful year at Baylor. He had a really successful year his first season. You know, he's had some success in places. Wants to run the ball. Offensive line pedigree. Where I struggle a little bit, we're going to get the kind of that's kind of where I'm optimistic, right? That's kind of what I like. The passing game for Kansas this year wasn't good. They were 12th in the Big 10, or Big 12, 15 touchdowns, 12 picks. And it feels to me like here's where I think this hire works, and this is what I'm hoping still happens. I hope if you do bring in Jeff Grimes, the Kansas offensive coordinator, he's coming in as kind of the OC run game coordinator, and then you're still bringing in a quarterback's coach. I think that's where this hire works. If the only move is to bring in Jeff Grimes and he's the OC/quarterbacks coach, I don't think that makes a ton of sense, and it'd be frustrating to me. But if you are bringing in a quarterback's coach and Grimes is coming in to get that running game going, I think those pieces could work together really well because that Kansas running game last year or this season is really good. That Kansas offense is averaging 29 points per game. That's a step up from Wisconsin is certainly now. So there's a lot you like here. I just am concerned about the passing numbers from Kansas. I'm a little bit concerned, if I'm being honest, about the trajectory. His last year at Baylor was pretty bad. So he had a really good year at Baylor in 2021, or in 22, sorry. And then in 23, last year, Baylor's offense fell off the cliff and he was let go. Hired on to Kansas this year, replacing Cole Nicky. And it's been okay. Kansas fans have been a little frustrated at times, I think, stemming from the passing attack, which has not looked great. But again, if you're bringing in someone else to help work with the quarterbacks, you're bringing in someone else to be kind of the quarterback coach / passing game coordinator, I think this marriage can work. And I'm hoping that's what happens here because I love what Kansas's rushing attack did, right? I also love the fact that Lance Leipold hired him. That's a guy who knows coaching talent. He had him come on and work on the staff with him at Kansas. So I think other coaches look at him as a good coach, look at Grimes as a good coach because he's worked with a lot of really, really good coaches. He's worked at a lot of high-profile places. I don't think you get those jobs if people don't think you can coach. So there's a ton of really, really impressive places that he's coached at and coaches he's worked under. That gives me hope. That gives me optimism. Let's take your comments here. Where are you guys at on this? What are your thoughts on this? Kevin Spangler says, had my hopes set on Brendan Marion. Something new and creative we can get excited about. I did too. That's the other thing. Sometimes in recruiting, in hiring, in coaching hires, you get your head set on somebody, and Marion is 37. He's a little younger, probably a little bit more creative, maybe a little bit more on the upswing. And you start to get your hopes set on that, and everything else maybe feels like a bit of a fallback, even though maybe it's not. But yeah, I had my hopes set on Brendan Marion as well. Definitely agree there. Jason Geldon says, why are some Badger fans already ripping this potential hire? I would say it's a couple things. I mean, just a year ago, he basically got let go from Baylor. Kansas fans are not exactly, just reading some of their comments, they've been frustrated this year with him. There was a point earlier in this year where Kansas, Lance Leipold, had to come out and kind of defend Grimes a little bit. So I think Kansas fans are, maybe that perspective is bleeding into Badgers fans' perspective. They don't seem entirely broken up about Grimes potentially leaving. But again, if you're bringing him in to coordinate the rushing attack, Kansas's rushing attack has been really good. But to answer your question, Jason, that's probably why. And I get it. I would also say it's a matter of expectations, which is something I said a little bit ago too. If you're expecting to get a Brendan Marion, if you're expecting to hopefully go get a Craddock, if you're expecting to hire someone like that has just nationally a little bit more cachet, and then you hire, even if Jeff Grimes ended up being a great hire, and again, this isn't even official, but if he's a guy, just the initial read, you were hoping for a certain guy and you didn't get him, and that's going to lead to some people being frustrated as well. I get that. Kevin Spangler, yeah, it's just this. I don't see Grimes on anybody's radar leading up to this. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that's why fans are frustrated. They just didn't see him coming, and they had their sights set on other people. It doesn't make him a bad hire. That does not make him a bad hire because we didn't see it coming. This is obviously an incredibly important hire for Luke Fickell. He knows that. And, if you want to get back to running the ball, if you want to get back to playing wide, like a wide zone scheme, if you want to get back to getting downhill, if you want to get back to controlling the line of possession, this is a good guy for that. This is a guy who's going to come in for everybody on Twitter, everybody in the fan sphere saying, get back to Wisconsin power football roots. Well, this is a guy to do that 100%. The question is, can he recruit and develop the talent in a passing game to make the offense successful? I don't think the question for him is, can he run the ball? It's, can he orchestrate a passing attack? And that's going to be the big question, which again, I think makes sense if you bring in someone else to help him with that. A couple of things here, going back to Grimes, 12th in the Big 12 in passing offense this year, second in rushing offense this year with 211 yards per game and 38 attempts per game. So he wants to run the rock. He wants to run it a lot. He has some creative schemes in there as well. One of the things he talked about, we'll pull up a quote here. This is from Coach Grimes. He said, one of the reasons he likes his wide zone scheme, there's a lot of reasons for that. This is a quote, some of which is that the play is very versatile with different formations and personnel groups. And it's something that is very consistent and allows you to stay on schedule and doesn't allow for a lot of negative plays and keeps you on schedule as an offense and as a play caller. A couple things there to pull out. He mentions multiple times staying on schedule. That was one of the biggest issues for this team, this offense, the last couple of years. How many times on 1st and 10 does 1st and 10 become 2nd and 9 under this Longo offense the last couple of years? Does 2nd and 9 become 3rd and 7? And then suddenly you're forced to throw the ball in a situation that's advantageous to the defense. So one of the things that Coach Grimes really harps on and really wants to do is stay ahead of schedule, run the ball consistently, do it with versatile and different formations. He has a creative run scheme. Like, these are all things we've been pining for. Again, it just comes back to, can he get the passing going? He was at BYU when Zach Wilson was there. Everybody remembers Zach Wilson, a number 2 or 3 pick in the draft. I think he was 2. Someone correct me in the chat. But he was there when Zach Wilson had that incredible year. So there is a history of him, at least when he had some talent, being able to put that passing attack together. But it hasn't happened at Kansas this year. And in the coaching landscape, you are more of what you've done recently. That's just kind of how it works. Justin Tyler says, let the chaos begin. Cannon L says, that's not go-go. Fickell needs to be gone. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I wouldn't go that far, but like, I get wanting Brendan Marion and then this not being what that vision is. Bo Dragon, Kansas 5-7. The quarterbacks are 14 touchdowns and 12 picks. Yeah, I think they're 15 and 12, but that's the point I made. Like, the passing game is scary to me. And maybe that's just a bad quarterback, but the offensive coordinator plays a role in that too. We've said that all year with Longo. Like, Locke is not very good, but Longo plays a role too. And I'll say it this is the last time I'm going to say it because I'm beating this dead horse. That's why I think you also got to bring in a quarterback coach. I think you bring in a quarterback guy to work with him, and I think that pairing could make a ton of sense. Brian Shetty says, well, I am whelmed. Yep, middle. Jordan Stewart says, everyone losing their minds. I love it. All the armchair coaches just make me laugh. And this is a fair point. Like, you have to let it play out. Like this, there's elements of this that make a ton of sense. We need to be more physical as a football team. We have to be able to run the ball, period. If we can't run the ball, we're not going to be able to do anything else at Wisconsin. So bringing a guy to fix that makes a ton of sense. If this is the guy, that makes a ton of sense. You go and get somebody who is all about it, who has shown success doing it, who wants to prioritize it, who was successful doing it this year, was successful not doing it at a blue chip level. So he's not going to come in here and need 5-star offensive linemen and 2 4-star running backs to do it. It makes a lot of sense in that element, if that's what we're trying to get back to. Brett McDonald says, physical, run first, lots of motion guy. Exactly what Fickle said he wanted. And that's a great point by Brett. This is what Fickle wanted to do, get more physical. And honestly, Lance Leipold is a really, really good coach. He knows football. I think if you're looking for reasons to buy into this, and I'm not here to sell you on it one way or the other, but Lance Leipold's going to hire people that he knows football. Like, that's the type of guy that isn't hiring jokers, right? So that makes me feel good about it as well. That's a coach that I trust to make hires. Pulling from his staff makes a lot of sense to me. Brett McDonald also points out 2 times Broyles finalist. The Broyles Award is given to the top assistant in the country, the top coordinator in the country. He was a 2-time finalist for that award. There's pedigree here. And again, going back to his offensive line kind of career, his coaching arc, he's coached at Auburn, at LSU. He's coached in a lot of big-time places where you got to be a dude to get those jobs. So I like that offensive line background. I think that's something to get really optimistic about. And if the Badgers run the ball, playing quarterback gets a lot easier. Throwing the ball gets easier. But again, you got to fix that quarterback spot. Zach Bart says, to be fair, Daniels had a lot of luck this season. I'm going to trust Fickle on this one until it doesn't work. Like his physical identity, power spread philosophy. Interested to see who we get at quarterback offensive coordinator coach. I think that's where I'm at too. I think that makes a ton of sense right there. Daniels wasn't good this year for Kansas. He's the quarterback. I think this comment makes a ton of sense. You do need somebody to come in and help with the passing game. Let's see. A couple more comments here. Anything else you guys got? Yeah, a couple comments. There's a couple comments in the thread. Not to be mean, but there's nowhere to go but up. Last year's offense was pretty brutal, and even if we continue to get inconsistent passing game, let's say he doesn't come in and fix the passing game, if we can at least run the ball better, that's a step up. That's a step forward in the right direction. And the other thing I'd say is there's probably much more alignment here, right? I think Fickle took a swing on Coach Longo. It didn't work. That turns out philosophically that wasn't a great fit. This feels more like the way Luke Fickle wants to run offense. And just that alignment, I think, is going to make it a lot easier. So I think in that sense, it could be a really good hire as well. Jay in Toronto says, who will be the quarterback's coach? Jason Geldon says, quarterback coach, please. I agree. I'll be frustrated if they don't bring in someone to also help with quarterbacks, to also help recruit quarterbacks, right? Because that's the other part of this. That's the one thing you could point to Phil Longo and say, quarterbacks did want to play for him. Like, you have to get somebody who can come help bring in those quarterbacks and work specifically with them. You know, Coach Grimes does not have a background doing that. And without the coaching limits now, there's really no excuse not to do that. So I would anticipate a quarterback's coach is still coming down the pipe on this one. Stephen Keel says he's an okay hire. Not great, doesn't move the needle. A couple more comments here. Ooh, Jason Geldon, this is a good one. Do you think Grimes and Blazek can complement each other? I do. And again, that's where maybe as a whole, the staff alignment is much stronger here. If you remember when Coach Longo came in, he brought Bicknell with him, and that wasn't a good fit, and Bicknell moved off. This feels like now from the head coach to the offensive coordinator, again, if this is finalized, down to Blazek, you have kind of an identity of we want to be physical, we want to prioritize the offensive line, and that could be something that's really beneficial as well. Thad Neal says feels like a safe hire. Jordan says everyone frustrated and moaning, back to winning 8 or 9 games now. Going to be an amazing 2025. I love that. Let's go, Jordan. I love the optimism. And you can see it. Like, you can really talk about the reasons this makes sense. Again, it's going back to the roots of being able to run the football. That's what this guy does. That's what Coach Grimes is going to prioritize. And that is a tremendous priority this offseason. You got to fix that. Luke Fickle talked about it at the end of the year. What was one of the first things he said post Minnesota? What did he say? He said, you have to be able to run the ball. I mean, you could tell it. He was exasperated by the fact that he's the coach at Wisconsin in the Big Ten, and we couldn't run the football with a veteran offensive line. It killed him. You could tell. And he's right. He's right, by the way. Wisconsin is never going to be so good throwing the ball that they don't need a running game. No matter what, bare minimum, the bottom rung of Wisconsin, you still got to be able to run the football. We could not do that this year when we had to. We could not do that consistently. Coach Grimes is going to fix that. Now, he's going to come in and prioritize it. We're going to run the ball better. Again, it all comes back to when teams load up now, can we also complement with the throwing game? Cody Schmidt says, don't love it. He is older and not that innovative, in my opinion. The older thing doesn't bother me as much now, and I'll tell you why. It would have previously because I think a younger coach, a little more dynamic, better recruiter. But now, honestly, with Max, Pat, and that recruiting department, I kind of don't mind the older coach as much. The older coach maybe not as creative and innovative, but also probably more confident in his system and then better as an X and O's guy. We need that. We need that coach, right? And with Max and Pat recruiting, I'm not as worried about maybe a lack of young energy on the recruiting trail because the OC doesn't recruit a ton anyway. Now he obviously helps with quarterback and he can help close some stuff down. But the recruiting is going to be the heavy shoulder lifting is going to be Max, Pat, Rybach, Zach Zilm, those guys that they're going to take care of that. We just need an offensive coordinator, X's and O's, prioritize the simple things. And in that sense, I think maybe an older, a little more established coach makes some sense. And it's also a guy who, if he does well here, let's say the Wisconsin offense turns around next year, a younger coach is more likely to bolt. This might be the type of consistency hire that helps Wisconsin bridge 3 or 4 years if it works out, right? Because he's not going to be getting a head coach job next year. He's not going to be, if this offense turns around, immediately the hot shot Brendan Marion type where every school's after him and maybe he bolts. This could be a consistent guy, reestablish the identity of Wisconsin, reestablish the offensive line, really run the ball again, and then set it up to be able to pass off of that running game. Let's see. Keep going here. Yeah, a couple questions about who that quarterback might be coming in. Bo Dragon asks, how does this help the quarterback room? I don't think it does, which again is, keep saying it, I think they have to get a quarterback coach or a passing game coordinator to come along with this because I don't think this helps the quarterback room. I think this helps the offense, but then you got to find someone else to do the quarterback portion of this. Will Hannah says, on paper, this is a B hire. I think that makes sense. I would say B hire contingent, again, upon, unless there's something I'm missing, B hire contingent upon getting someone in to help work with quarterbacks. I would agree with that. I think that's a fair take. Yep. Kenneth doesn't like the hire. He says you're delusional if you think this is a good hire, much less a safe hire. Yeah, I mean, you could be right. You could be right. I'll be honest. I've been digging into Grimes since I saw the news break. So I'm going to go after tonight. We have a bit of a Christmas party thing. I'm going to watch some film. I'm going to dig more into it. We'll talk about it more, but maybe you're right. I mean, I thought Longo was a great hire and that one turned out wrong. So, I don't know. I think for me, it's going to be wait and see to see what the follow-up moves are, to see what quarterback comes in with the offensive coordinator, quarterback coach. I think there's follow-up moves to happen. And until then, you're judging a picture that isn't complete. And I don't think that's fair, right? We can like this hire or not like this hire, but I don't think this puzzle is done moving. And Sorry about that. My stream died. I have no idea what happened. Hotel garbage is Wi-Fi. Go fickle yourself 100%. I got to cut it anyway because I got to go to a party. I'm going to dig a lot more into this on Wisconsin. I do think it's intriguing in the sense of he could get us back to being what Wisconsin wanted to be in terms of running the ball first, being physical. I am worried about the passing game, but I want to see what happens next. So that's my synopsis. Y'all are amazing. Happy Friday. We'll talk later.